Hello there, welcome back to Red Dead Redemption 2. Yes, we are back in the Wild West, or in Red Dead Redemption 2's case, the exacerbated East. Regardless, the police still have the same authority as a supply teacher in a rough school. But today we are asking an extremely important question that nobody sensible has ever asked before. Can you beat Red Dead Redemption 2 using Mr. Pearson's loadout? Yes, him, the camp chef, the man whose first name escapes me, the man whose greatest combat achievement is aggressively seasoning the stew, and the same guy who would lose a fight to a chair. So naturally, we are going to honour his legacy by limiting ourselves to whatever weapons that were used by a man whose main priority is not dying on the way to the toilet, which means questionable decisions, terrible range, and even worse accuracy. And no, I'm not talking about his issues in the lavatory. Pearson has that embodiment of the modern day American. Absolutely should not be allowed near a firearm, but probably has one anyway. Rules are simple. If Pearson wouldn't use it, neither do I. If it looks too cool, too efficient, or God forbid too fun, it is banned, and if at any point I feel competent, I have to stop and reevaluate the time I've spent in this game instead of using that time to make important life decisions. I am using mods to help on this challenge, so if you are interested, they will be down in the description below. And since you're down there, why not chuck a like on this video and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out. Without further ado, let's dive straight into this challenge. Now, before I set off, I wanted to change the way I look. Unfortunately, I encountered problems straight out the gate. As soon as I take on Pearson's model, the game classifies this as a death. This probably has something to do with the change of health and stamina stats that make me less formidable than my horse if it was made of jelly, or it might be because I'm in the middle of a mission. But there was an option to only copy the skin instead of changing the whole model. This fortunately does work, sort of. It makes the model visually rather ugly, and sort of looks like an alien is sticking out of my forearms. I mean, this is clearly not human. Another issue I ran into was that, yes, I did look like Pearson before, but as soon as a cutscene happens, the game decides that it would be a grand idea to smash the faces of Pearson and Arthur into one, and like a homophobic wedding planner, those two should not go together. It was a truly horrifying reveal. Since we are talking about the two of them being smashed together like the fillings of a sandwich, I have decided to do the same with their names, and so this creation will be known as Pearson, which sounds like he's a character from Game of Thrones, and either sounds like it's a father talking to his son, or a king talking about his succession. Oh yes, I forgot to mention. The weapons Pearson will be using are as follows: his meat cleaver, his knife, his fists, and that's about it. I will allow Pearson to use a gun for dire situations, such as duels, dead-eye sections, and if things are getting more chaotic than a pair of raccoons fighting in a library. Anyway, moving on. In the snowstorm, we see a man appear from the shadows. Well, it's Micah, of course. He always appears in, quite frankly, less than ideal situations. Will he be making things better? Who knows. Dutch likes taking the rear, so obviously Pearson is the obliging type and trots up in the formation. We found the ridge overlooking a house. Dutch and Micah circled around to find a safe path down the hill, but Pearson does not follow. Pearson does not adhere to health and safety. If a location needs to be reached, he will go as the crow flies. We took it upon ourselves to skid down the hill, and by some miracle, I lived. I mean, the horse did too, but mainly I lived. We dealt with the current occupants, intimidating them with a face that would terrify the average man. We comforted the previous tenants as they had their home and themselves repossessed. Oh god, that's depressing. No worries, however, as Micah lightens the mood by lighting the entire house on fire. Good job, Micah. Moving on, Javier and I went to find John as he has gone missing up a mountain. What a silly man he is. You can't hide from parental responsibility, John. Anyway, we picked up John, used my meat cleaver to lobotomize a pack of wolves, and returned John to his loving family, who were absolutely worried sick about him. Ran into another problem, quite literally, as my character does struggle to animate in certain cutscenes. So when I walk into this cutscene, I proceed to stare into the abyss. Not to mention the objects Pearson usually interacts with don't change, which may things quite interesting. The gang rode out to the O'Driscoll hideout. We took the high ground, had a little nosy, and we got into position for an ambush. Pearson led the charge and started butchering the enemies. Threw my cleaver at the sniper, but he was so selfish that he didn't give it back to me. Fine, I'll go and get it myself. Took out my frustration on his friend. My therapist suggested that I take out my aggression in a controlled way. And before you say anything, this is controlled because this guy is already dead. They did launch a counterattack from the woods, but unlucky for them, this was perfect for Pearson, aka the Desert Stew Pot, to brutally pick them off one by one. We stole their plans for a train heist, took one of them hostage, and made it back to camp. We went hunting with Charles, found some deer tracks, which is fantastic as I couldn't use my hunter instinct for whatever reason, so if we weren't in the snow, I would be completely buggered. Pearson is not the best hunter around, but he does adapt. That's what he does best. My trusty cleaver strikes again with tremendous accuracy, and we return the carcasses to my less good-looking twin. It's time for us to rob the train, and as you can see, Pearson is very eager, being at the front of the posse, showing his excitement for the heist by literally eating his own bandana. We rigged some dynamite on the tracks that didn't go off, so 3 of us jumped onto the train and 2 of us made it. Killed everyone on board apart from the train driver, who I can't really explain how this happened, but he fell off his own train. He was clearly not fit for work. Pearson was also so steadfast in that encounter that he had literally welded his feet to the train. Seriously, I can't move. I started pressing random buttons to tell the game to break me free. However, the game took it rather metaphorically, as the camera started floating above instead. Even though Lenny was able to stop the train, I was still stuck in the 3rd state of existence. I couldn't find a solution to this problem, so I reloaded a checkpoint. Upon reloading the game, my progress of the last 2 missions had been erased, which means I have to go through all of them again. I have a feeling in the pit of my stomach that this might be a recurring problem, but we're going to move on. We won't let this setback set us back, mentally anyway, as physically it's ahead of the game. Robbed the train again. Lenny died a few times, one of which was admittedly my fault, others were just him being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I did find this one time weird, however. As I was assaulting the passengers of the train, I tackled one of them to the floor in front of the other, and as you can see, I was 1 gunshot away from death. I was in perfect position to be finished off by the guy in front of me, but if you look closely, you can see the enemy lift his gun at the last minute and aim down towards the other side of the carriage, where Lenny was. All I'm saying is, after playing this mission quite a few times, it seems obvious that the enemies have priority targeting. Killed a guy on top of a train cart, but the animation led me to fall flat on my face. Lenny died again. I started dispatching the rest of the enemies in a very productive way. Robbed the train's main cart. Well, I did. Lenny and Micah gave up trying to open the vault, no idea why. Killed the prisoners and sent the train on its merry way. We made our way out of the mountains, crossed the stream, and disaster struck as a wheel broke off the wagon. It is a fate worse than death. Anyway, we fixed it, said hello to the locals, didn't pick up Javier. Don't blame me, Pearson is the one who's driving and he won't let anything distract him away from his destination. I was also curious to see if there was going to be any new dialogue if you didn't pick Javier up, because Rockstar is known for hiding away small little gems like that. Or at this point, they're more like crumbs rather than gems. To my disappointment, nothing changed, other than Javier staring at me like I left skid marks on the toilet. After setting up the camp, I took Uncle and the girls to Valentine. One of the horses pulling the wagon died, but the remaining horse became an absolute Chad as he pulled the wagon all by himself the rest of the way. Congratulations, you stallion. Technically you are a Shire horse or something, but still well done. Walked into the store with Uncle and he told me to buy some salted beef.
You got some nice jerky here. You look like you could use some energy, Arthur.
Which was a line I have never heard before. Maybe Uncle just looked at Pearson and thought he could throw some shade. I bought some anyway to spite him. Saved Tilly, showing this man a considerable amount of intimidation, and of course that makes sense because Pearson is the size of a bloody bus. Saved Karen as well and chased a guy who saw us in Blackwater. Saved his life. He gave me a pen that Pearson fed to his belly, apparently high nutritional value in pens in those days. Met up with the guys in the saloon, started a fight in the saloon, saved Bill in the saloon, then got thrown out the front window. of the saloon. Pearson won the fight by just standing there taking hits like a bong user with remarkable lung capacity. After being told about Sean being captured, I went to save Swanson from getting beaten up by a hairy egg. Again, Pearson taking hits like a champ before headbutting the offender. Someone saw us, so in order to maintain this word, I gunned him down in the mud, saved Swanson and returned him to camp. We went hunting with Hosea, christened my new horse by calling it my horse. Yes, it is a very impressive and stoic name. However, after hunting a rabbit by throwing my cleaver at its furry face, I tried entering the crafting mode, but Pearson just decides to stand up and go for a wander. This kept happening a number of times, and I was trying everything to fix it. Pearson even set himself on fire, and Hosea was the only one getting the benefit. Skip to the next morning where we started tracking the bear Hosea was after. We decided to split up instead of placing bait solely because one scenario is quicker at finding the bear than the other. Scared off the bear, my forehead is so enormous that it starts phasing through the hat, and I left with Hosea. Collected the depths for Strauss, nothing interesting, just successfully using my charisma to extort financially vulnerable individuals. I did catch Chick Matthews quicker than someone going to Las Vegas thinking they were immune to STIs. I did figure out a way to sort out my game not saving my progress, and that was just to make sure I manually save the game instead of relying on the autosave. A very simple solution, I know, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Upon our return, Pearson takes some time to make sure the stew is perfectly seasoned, and of course it was nothing but subpar. Or he possibly just burnt his mouth. Pearson is a very hard man to read, keeping his emotions hidden better than Karen's drinking problem. Moving on, we threatened Kieran with castration before giving up the location of his boss. We arrived at 6 Point Cabin, where Pearson can go about his business. Bill was a bit slow to take out this guy, very lucky to not have our possession given away by a man who was clearly petrified of any action. After butchering the rest of the camp and kicking a man in the face, Pearson got knocked on his backside by someone whose life expectancy was the same as a newly born sea turtle. Next, we went to beat up Mr. Downs and he spat in my face. Skipped ahead to visit Micah, fresh from a night of drinking copious amounts of alcohol in celebration of him getting jailed in the first place. Despite that, I broke him out, killed the sheriff for not believing my charismatic lie of being a bounty hunter. And why wouldn't he? Look at him. Pearson is a man of action. Micah did get shot, but we see that as a necessary work-related incident. Upon escaping, we saw a man frolic in a way that could be perceived as an attempt to get me sent off the pitch. After that, we prepped to save Sean from some bounty hunters, took out a guy's femoral artery, I suppose. It was close enough for him to stop moving. In this fight, I unlocked a new power for Pearson. You see, Pearson having one meat cleaver is frightening enough, but what if he had infinite meat cleavers? Yes, you can't simply hide behind a rock and keep your distance, as Pearson will never run out of meat cleavers and will not stop until the definitive occasion that is your death. Unless you are standing on top of a very high cliff, then your odds of living go up significantly. Next, we visited Mary. She needs our help, but Pearson has progressed significantly in his maturity since their relationship, and has decided to do the decent thing and let her sort out her own problems. We discussed a train robbery with John and praised him for his brilliant plan, whilst also making him feel like the thickest person in the world. Pearson murdered someone in broad daylight for his oil wagon and got away with it. He also attempted to commit insurance fraud against Hosea just before we robbed a man's house. Back to the train robbery with the oil wagon in position, Pearson secured it by standing on it. Because you may not know this, but Pearson has the ability to stop a train by pure presence. You see, if Pearson wasn't on top of the oil wagon with his bandana surgically attached to his face, the train would have surely just ploughed through. Saved Sean from getting shot, and he thanked me by barging into me without apologising, which for those of you that don't know, that is illegal in Britain. During the gunfight, I realised that trying to hit targets that are moving really fast on horseback was in fact very frustrating. Why could they not allow their horses to catch their breath while I bury a butcher's favourite utensil into their frontal lobe? Helped Micah rob a bank coach, and during this high-speed robbery the wheels on the coach flew off. And a smug intellectual that has played this game numerous times will tell you that this is some kind of subtle foreshadowing, but maybe the guy fixing those wheels just got fed up with being paid in baked beans all his life. Despite a whoopee cushion prank going wrong, Pearson absolutely decimated the enemies, determined to build a dam for the river by using the bodies of his unfortunate victims. John and I tried scaring off some sheep farmers but gave me a rifle to do it, and since this wasn't a weapon that was allowed, I dropped it and pulled out my revolver and started firing off shots. But this had the same effectiveness as firing a Nerf gun at a Ford Focus. Ended up using the rifle to progress the story and rounded up the sheep to the auction. We got ambushed and entered a standoff with enemies that have two of our friends held hostage. And Pearson, being the tactical genius he is, had decided that hiding behind this wheelbarrow was the optimal strategy, followed by shooting John in the shoulder. We fought our way out of the town. Strauss got shot, which was shocking. We can't let him die. Who will loan money to desperate people who have absolutely no way of paying it back? Regardless, we escaped. Again. Charles and I were sent on a recon mission to find a new camp spot. We saved a German man from some criminals, and the rest of the gang moved down to set up camp. After collecting some prisoners that went AWOL, the gang planned its next move. Dutch wanted to go fishing, but Pearson has the same amount of patience as a dog that's learnt to spell, so he went for a swim with his horse, punched some locals while fixing a local love story. Took Sadie shopping, which ended with us being targeted by criminals who were willing to die over some tinned fish. Except for this guy who didn't die for canned goods, but ran away because he wouldn't socialize with the meat cleavers I was throwing at him. After the mission, the camera got stuck at a weird angle and I was coming to terms with how this playthrough was going to look like from now on. Moving on, we went on a robbery with Charles, Bill and Uncle, which ended with us getting chased by the entire population of Wales. We hid in a barn, got spotted and fought our way out. Pearson just chucking meat cleavers anywhere and they still seemed to hit their target. We hid in the forest and had to take out guards silently. Uncle, however, must be completely deaf as he clearly thinks his double-barrel shotgun has a silencer. Went to help Charles and Bill, but a horse came out of nowhere and ran us over without flinching. After that mess, we met up with Dutch and co to arrest some moonshiners. Caught Dutch in a state of confusion whilst Archibald was clearly hallucinating. We tied up the criminals and was told to blow up the distillery with dynamite. But there's one problem. Pearson doesn't use dynamite usually unless he's adding a bit of spice to the communal stew. So I simply shot it until it explodes. Lenny and I arrived to steal some weapons from the Civil War nutters, and after scoping out their base, pointing out their heavily guarded perimeter, we launched a full frontal assault that would make a World War I general blush. After clearing out the base, we grabbed the weapons and returned to camp. Bill and the others informed us that the Valentine Bank was ripe for the picking, so we jumped onto our horse and rode back to Valentine. On the way, however, Pearson is a very skeptical man, as he believes before every bank robbery he needs to divert sharply off course, atop some rocks, and ask his horse to launch itself into the air before crashing down to the ground face first. As far as interesting morning rituals go, this is very unorthodox. Rode into town, blew up the safes and shot our way out of town. Pearson's accuracy with his meat cleavers are only becoming more deadly as the game goes on. We escorted Hosea to the saloon to give away free booze, which we can all agree is the greatest thing in the known universe. What's even more impressive is Pearson's ability to pour drinks with his mind. The locals were so astounded by this phenomenon that they believed the best course of action was to murder everyone who witnessed it. After that interaction, we went with Sean to burn some fields. Pearson got a little carried away as he inadvertently set Sean on fire. We escaped and looked upon a fiery inferno that America hasn't seen since, well, last year. We found Trelawney captured by some bounty hunters and the cowards ran away and hid in the cornfields. Little did they know that Pearson and his meat cleaver will not stop until he delivers a thorough examination of their frontal cortex, or have their chest opened up with a shotgun blast, courtesy of Charles Smith. Either way, there isn't an outcome where they walk away from this. We stole some horses, got shot by some guards who were showcasing textbook antisocial behaviour, One of the horses escaped and was captured again as quick as I could finish this sentence. And of course, we delivered the horses to the Shifty twins. Yeah, there was very little for Pearson to do this mission. Maybe he could take some time to reflect, perhaps contemplate life as a tree, I don't know. Spoke to Micah, but the cutscene didn't trigger properly, so I was treated to an event that was more confusing than a film I started paying attention to 1 hour in. Pearson was Dutch and Micah's guardian angel in this mission, aligning with his own traits to protect and defend them from physical dangers, and apart from his lack of self-preservation, he completed his job successfully, so can't complain. 10 out of 10. Rode my horse out of the enemy camp, crossing paths with one of the enemy sentries who had the foresight to see that I was simply just stretching my legs. A few weeks had passed and I spoke to Trelawney about robbing a coach. We paid a station worker to give us information about an incoming coach and its passengers. Trelawney stopped the carriage whilst we sneak in and loot the lockbox. Unfortunately, Pearson somehow lost the lockbreaker Trelawney gave him 5 seconds ago. Can only imagine he ate it or fed it to his belly like he did with the pen earlier, so he went with a quite straightforward approach that left Trelawney less than impressed. Took a stroll with Micah, Bill and Sean, of which the latter got his head opened up like a can of Spam. While the rest of us had to defend against the ambush, we saw one of the horses perform what I believe skateboarders call a pop shove it, only with itself. Threw a meat cleaver into someone's jaw so accurately that it triggered the guy to have some kind of epiphany for about 6 seconds. We survived and rode towards the Braithwaite estate because they stole Jack. We unleashed hell on them, committing utter destruction and domination right on their doorstep, clearing room by room, suggesting new facial accessories to the occupants. Found the woman responsible and we burned down her house because she kidnapped a bloody child. A valid response. After being dragged outside, the woman walked into the burning house like a cow at the abattoir. We accompanied John to Shady Bell, the next hideout location, and immediately had a traffic collision with another rider. After exchanging insurance details, we went our separate ways and we arrived at Shady Bell. Pearson had trouble with an invisible door, but we cleared out the house of all enemies.
Soon enough.
We found out some information about Angelo Bronte, the man who stole Jack, and Pearson becomes acquainted with the average ignorance of the Saint Denis residents. We met up with John and Dutch and got introduced to Bronte. Now this is where things got a little weird, as during this cutscene the game started shaking the camera uncontrollably. Somehow because of this my horse died. I have no idea how or why, I can only imagine it fell through the map to its death. Regardless, I have another horse now and his name is of course my horse 2. I know my genius at times can be frightening. Went to the cemetery with John, killed the grave robbers, Pearson stole their stash with the power of his mind and returned Jack to his family. The next morning got into a fight with an alligator and rescued Tilly from her former gang associates. We got invited to a party in Saint Denis, so Pearson of course made sure to look the part so that he can blend in. Chucked a guy out of the party, had some chit chat with the mayor. He is French. Anyway, we stole some documents from his office and left with them none the wiser. Met up with Trelawney to dress for a casino on a riverboat. Of course, Pearson grabbing his most sophisticated attire for such an event. Went to the barber's, Pearson couldn't get through the bloody door. We smartened ourselves up and arrived at the party. Smashed a guy at poker and went upstairs to collect the winnings. Had a weird altercation with the manager who missed me at point blank range. I guess he should get his eyes checked because wow. Fought our way off the boat and into the river. Spoke with Dutch at camp and he was taking so long to get up some stairs that it went from nighttime to daytime. Kieran strolled into camp and the O'Driscolls attacked, Pearson unleashing his lethal accuracy upon the intruders. We pushed them back and buried Kieran. We met up with Lenny and Dutch and robbed the trolley station because all those £1 coins that people leave behind are not going to steal themselves. We escaped on a trolley, didn't adhere to the give way sign we saw earlier, so now we are on foot. We made it to the wagon and initiated a high-speed chase down the cobbled high streets. We escaped with our lives, Pearson's face being plastered all over the streets of Saint Denis to warn the citizens that this man may visit you in the middle of the night. Went into a swamp, threw a couple of meat cleavers at an albino crocodile during its bulking season, which felt like I was just chucking ping pong balls at a tank. We made a social call to Angelo Bronte's residence to question his business intellect. Aside from a brief moment where Earson got backhanded by a police officer during a kidnapping, his fate was sealed. We went to start the cutscene for the Saint Denis robbery, however Earson saw all of this socializing as pointless as he rides on ahead. To be honest, I actually couldn't do anything. Both Earson and the camera was locked in place, which led to a total surprise as I got ran over by a complete cavalcade of mass murderers. This caused a minor delay where no blame was placed on anyone. This was already the most stressful day of everyone's lives. There is no time to file an insurance claim. After robbing the bank, Hosea got ruined from behind and Earson climbed to a rooftop to unleash a storm of meat cleavers from the sodding sky. Lenny bumped into two men that were part of the larger number of men trying to kill us, and just like that, the soul and the heart of the gang had been extinguished. We waited until nightfall to board a boat and set sail on the ocean as the world's most unconventional attempt at dodging the law. Or maybe it's just the world's biggest sidestep, I don't know. We made it onto the boat and Dutch is telling us about his grand plan. Look at Earson, bathing in the sunshine, consuming his daily dose of vitamin D with a spoon. We wash up on an island, Earson stumbles across a beach, possibly due to dehydration and a brief drowning. Earson, you need to take off your winter clothes, we are on a tropical island. Reunited with the gang members who are definitely the most caring, and immediately we got captured, chained together, walking through the 7 realms of hell. We got ambushed, so we used this opportunity to escape. Someone called Hercule was the man that freed us, and has asked for our help in freeing some workers. I found one of the workers, then fell unconscious. I woke up to a man beating the 7 daylights out of me, trying to take him seriously, but he had an extra large mustache on his face, and I was struggling to find it anything but funny. We saved the workers by killing all the guards, ending with Earson throwing a chair in disgust. We needed to infiltrate the compound to save Javier, so Dutch paid a pensioner in gold, then murdered her and didn't even loot her to get the gold back. It really is a wonder why Dutch keeps telling us to make more money when he is basically throwing it all away. To distract the enemies, we blew up a building, grabbed Javier and made our escape despite the entire nation's population chasing us like an unpaid bill. We regrouped at a fortress where we became under siege from a warship, because, I don't know, they need the practice, I suppose. We fought them on the beaches and blew up the warship. We rescued the captain and fought our way to the boat, and blew Fusar. Oh yeah, Fusar was the guy in charge of everything on the island, sorry, forgot to mention that bit. Anyway, we left and reunited with the gang who were immediately attacked by the Pinkertons. I was told to get on the machine gun, but Earson much preferred using cleavers to personally escort the enemies to hell. Spoke with Dutch about moving camp as the pile of dead bodies in camp last night were starting to leave a less than desired smell. Charles and I travelled to Beaver Hollow and cleared out the Murphy Brood gang. They were, let's just say, utter bastards, and Earson was itching to mow them down where they stood. Everyone moved in, Molly showed up highly intoxicated, so Grimshaw shot her. Went for a stroll in Saint Denis, which ended with me getting some life-changing news. Met Sadie and she enrolled us into a class of aviation. We used the balloon to locate John, who was in prison due to the bank robbery going quite wrong. After hovering above them like a socially awkward teenager at an adult party, we got shot at and decided to leave and cover Sadie, who was being chased by the O'Driscolls. Balloon Man got shot, which was quite deflating, picked up Sadie and immediately crashed into a river. After fighting off the O'Driscolls, which was a bit difficult as Earson has the same center of gravity as a bowling pin, we had a chat with Sadie, who says that the leader of the O'Driscolls, whose name I recently realized was pronounced Column, we teamed up with Sadie to break John out of jail and fended off the prison guards. We got to the boat and Earson wanted to use a rifle and I smacked his hand away and forced him to keep throwing sticks with bladed metal attached to them. We returned to camp and Dutch was so happy with one of his own making it out of prison that he threw a temper tantrum like a bloody child. Anyway, Dutch and Micah have got a plan, sort of, which involves making a deal with Cornwall. not the county, the man we've been harassing with all our robberies. Dutch, I'd imagine, just got bored and shot Cornwall anyway. We got into another firefight with more enemies, and we really start to question what the hell Dutch is on these days. Eagle Flies, a Native American we assisted earlier in the game, quite far back actually, talks about the army, yes, the army, stealing their horses. We boarded the boat, took out the sailors, and we simply had to drive the boat somewhere where we can dismount the horses. Seems simple, right? Wrong. The horses did make it to shore. Charles asked me to go speak with Eagle Flies' father, Rainsfall, and we said nah, as this video is already getting a bit long and saying yes means more missions to go through, and at this point in the video, sod that. Bill and I ambushed a wagon full of dynamite which could only be used to make things worse. Safe to say this took us a couple of attempts, what with the famous pairing of exposed dynamite and gunfire. After a mission that involved negotiations with the army going smoother than the council's attempt to fill in potholes on the road, we bumped into Swanson, who had the foresight to leave town as this gang was clearly going to fall apart fairly soon. Dutch and Sadie came up with a plan to make sure Column stays dead by sabotaging his gang's attempts to free him, which ends with Column's reality hitting him harder than a truck. He then dies. Nice. After blowing up a bridge with John, we had a little heart-to-heart that in summary was, Dutch is a bit of a psycho, maybe you should leave with your family. Dutch and Eagle Flies plan to humiliate a group of soldiers, but this goes sideways more than a drifting contest in a hurricane, which ends with Eagle Flies getting captured. A scenario where Dutch and Pearson jump off a cliff, and all these outcomes need to end with one of the army officers probably earning a demotion or a stern telling off. Accompanied Charles to free Eagle Flies from Fort Wallace, we waited until nightfall and infiltrated the fort. Threw a cleaver into a guard's back, but then he turned around in confusion as to why I cut his life short. Released Eagle Flies, blew out a hole in the wall, and escaped down the river. Eagle Flies returned to camp with an army and informs us he's going to attack the US Army at the oil factory. Rainsfall asks for my help. Dutch is utterly bewildered by the fact we have a friend outside the social circle. We arrive at the battle and rescue Eagle Flies. We fought off the enemies to secure a perimeter, whilst Dutch and I find information about a train with the army's payroll. I get gassed, 3 soldiers arrive, and instead of just shooting me, one of them pulls out their knife and tries to stab me, because otherwise it would have been too easy. Dutch leaves me, but I am saved by Eagle Flies, who is shot by Colonel Sanders. I then rise up, fueled by anger, rage. Avenging Eagle Flies in this moment is pivotal, but I got shot as well. I suppose Deadeye didn't activate, that's a bit embarrassing. I reloaded a checkpoint to find that Pearson had turned into a creature that is only known in urban legends. Oh, that is horrifying. Pearson reappeared and we returned Eagle Flies to his father. Charles stays behind to look after the reservation and I pass out again and some Germans pick me up. I end up in a tree, clearly no one in camp sees this as out of the ordinary. Now, it is time to rob the train. Not like that train in chapter 1, this is the real stuff, the top-notch prize that every criminal is after. Money. We boarded the train, turned every soldier on it into sushi. John gets shot. I am given no choice but to use the machine gun. We blow up the armoured cart and steal the money before we jump off and the train tumbles down into the valley. We join Sadie in rescuing Abigail, fought our way to where she's being captured, had a chat with Milton, and Abigail shot him in the face. We went and had a very calm discussion with Dutch, accused Micah of being a complete muppet, and he took that personally. Sorry Micah, that's just the truth. John returns from the dead, Micah shoots Grimshaw, Dutch turns his back on us, and the Pinkertons attack. My horse too dies, rest in peace. We help get John to safety. We said our goodbyes as we hold off the rest of the Pinkerton agents. Micah tackles us from behind and starts getting beaten half to death by a man suffering from a bacterial disease. Dutch intervenes, turns his back on us again. Micah also leaves, and we find a nice spot facing the east, watching the sunrise as we say goodbye to this world. Now I want to just add that none of the epilogue missions will be shown except for the last one, because there's only so much recording space I have on my computer. This game is also 50+ hours long, and the epilogue missions are boring as hell. Many years later, playing as John/Pearson, or Pearson, as he will be known for this mission. We find out Micah is hiding in the mountains, and during the entire cutscene, Pearson is losing his mind. Charles gets shot, so we pushed on without him. Sadie gets stabbed, a man gets beaten up by a ghost, and Pearson just walks off the mountain because he got bored. Fought our way to Micah, and during his evil villain monologue, Pearson, like his twin brother, could not give less of a toss. He is literally not even acknowledging his existence. Anyway, we killed Micah and made sure he was triple dead because you can never know with rats these days. We also looted him to find out he is completely broke and threw his body off the mountain. And that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the amazing adventures of Pearson and of course Pearson. This video is probably the longest I have ever done on this channel, so if you did enjoy it, please chuck a like on this video as it's really appreciated, especially since you made it to the end. If you would like to see another video of mine, it will be on screen. Trust me, you will have an absolute blast with it. Anyway, thank you for putting up with me and for lending me your patience, and I will hopefully see you all in the next video.